Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of Fat to Fit. My name is Devani, and today we're going to be talking about, again, saturated fats. Specifically, why do saturated fats taste so good? Alright? So, now as you may know, saturated fats are in predominantly the things that they say aren't good for us but taste so good to us, right? So we have the examples of saturated fat foods would be I have a list right here, about 2 lists, and they're a little bit repetitive and redundant. But we're gonna get through it either way. Number 1, butter. Of course, you're gonna find saturated fat in butter, suet. Now, people don't know what suet is. Evidently, back in the 18th century, that's something our ancestors would have used, especially around colonial times, in Britain and all that. I believe that comes from the sheep or the lamb, like the liver or something like that, the liver fat from a type of animal. Unfortunately, for some reason, it's illegal to have that in America now, but if you're outside of America, maybe you can find it. Lard, you can always find lard pretty much everywhere, not really in big supermarket chains, but maybe smaller independent ones, sure, yeah. Coconut oil and palm oil. Now palm oil is like 50% saturated, and another 50% of it would be polyunsaturated fat. I'm not a big fan of that, but I guess it is what it is. What else we have? We have cakes, biscuits, fatty cuts of meat, sausages, bacon. Alright, so I think that the writer of this article pretty much wanted to expand and try to get as much word vomit out, but it's all the same when you think about it. So we have cakes, biscuits. These are carbohydrates. Now, within a cake and a biscuit, ask yourself, what is something that they would use as saturated fat? Now, predominantly, the saturated fats we would find would be in anything that couldn't melt at a room temperature, such as butter, lard, coconut oil. And also, a lot of people don't realize that saturated fat can also be found in dairy as well. So this is why saturated fats, cheese would pop up on a list of saturated fats. Yes, you're going to have saturated fats in things such as whole milk, and they would use the whole milk to turn it into, example, like Parmesan cheese, which I have right here, but I don't want to make my room a mess and fling it in front of the camera, so you're just going to have to take my word for it. So the rest would be, cured meats, cheese, pastries, sausage rolls, croissants, cream. Now, we're talking about cream, and automatically we know that's dairy. A croissant, a saturated fat, yes, croissants. You can have croissants with imbalance. I mean, it's not ketogenic. Maybe if you can find a recipe for a ketogenic croissant, please let me know. But, butter. It's like a whole bunch of butter folded into like bread. So there's a saturated fat in the croissant. Ice cream. Whole milk to create the ice cream, saturated fat in the whole milk. Therefore, there's a saturated fat in the ice cream. I don't think it's the healthiest thing to have. Now, on this list, you have some good saturated fat options in foods, and then you have a lot of bad options, such as the ice cream, the milkshakes, the chocolate. What else do you have? The pastries, the croissants. I mean, I love croissants, but I wouldn't consider them to be the healthiest. So I probably wouldn't have that on the list for good saturated fats. Now, I believe personally that there's just a lot of confusion and misunderstanding and a lot of miscommunication within the food science community as well when it comes to what is a good saturated fat, is saturated good for you or not. And there's a lot of data that's coming out recently proving that saturated fats are not as bad for your health as once originally thought. If anything, they're good for you. Remember, science is constantly changing. It's not always going to be the same way. I mean, think of it. Back in the 50s, if we were in the 50s, we would think, all right, this is the most that, this is what life is. This is the most that science can be. We know everything. And here we are in 2023, and we realize our scientists back in the 50s, they knew a lot. Sometimes they're completely off the mark, and now we have scientists of now to realize that. And in the future, it's only going to continue to get better. So data and research is always going to be changing. Typically. Now let's discuss as to why saturated fats taste so good as soon as it hits the tongue of our mouth, right? There could be a lot of predictions. I mean, when you really think about it, Butter doesn't really have a distinct odor that really attracts us to it. I mean, if you really were to get like a teaspoon or a stick of butter, you buy the stick of butter, it's not going to taste so delicious. So what is it about it that when you put it in food, it just makes it taste so much better? And the same thing to be said with lard. It doesn't taste good, before you cook it, but when you cook it, it tastes phenomenal, or it makes your food taste phenomenal. And the reason why that is actually because scientists have recently discovered that there are particular receptors on our taste bud cells. And the reason why that is because scientists have recently discovered that our tongues have particular taste receptors that, when are activated with the fats, it actually gives us this reaction, right? And the name of these taste buds on our cells are called CD36 and the G protein. So my research says it's a coupled receptor, GPCR120, whatever that means. But it tastes great, so that's what it means. The CD36 and the G protein receptors, once they are activated, as soon as the fat, hits the tongue, the neurotransmitters in our brains actually release compounds through the digestive tract. So as soon as you take your fatty, buttery food, you get that croissant, you put it in your mouth, we have receptors on the tongue, right? Those that CD36 and the G protein receptors. They're activated by our neurotransmitters, and the short chain fatty acids going down the digestive tract, and also the lipids that are absorbed by the body. So all in all, this chemical combination going on in our tongue is what gives us the sense of eating fat, of tasting fat, which makes everything taste so good once it has a little bit of butter or bacon grease. Now, of course, we're not going to be able to, get a scoop of lard, put it in our mouth, and realize, oh, this is like tasting chocolate or or tasting a lemon or something like that. It's not like that. I believe it's only activated really when you cook it, right? So when you cook it, maybe these receptors are, I don't know, I guess the chemicals within the fat, the chemical compounds within the fat are activated by the receptors on our tongue, and we are able to digest them, which is actually all really interesting. I never knew this before, and well, I guess you're just seeing me discover something for the first time. Isn't that nice? So very, very, very interesting information, right? So this is the reason why saturated fat tastes so good. Well, I don't know about you, but I think I'm gonna go in the kitchen and make myself a French omelet. So thank you for watching. Please let me know what you guys think down below. What's your favorite food out there? Are you a big fan of croissants? Do you like putting butter in your eggs? How do you get your saturated fats in your diet? Alright? But, like, subscribe, and I'll see you again next time, okay? Thanks for watching.